What's up, guys? David here, your host of Business with the Boys, and as always, joined with my co-host Landon Troyer, who is repping both us with his Business with the Boys tee, as well as our sponsor Landjet. He's got the baseball hat on. Appreciate you representing. You're like a walking billboard.
Yeah, I figured it was a casual recording day, so Landjet scooped up some new headgear, so decided I'd throw on the white lid today and go with the BWTB shirt as well, just to represent.
I love it. And let me actually pull up our friends over at Landjet sent us a flyer. It's basically the price of an Uber. And for those of you who don't know, Landjet is basically like a bougie sprinter van that you can use for office meetings, guys, girls' nights out, events, concerts to and from the airport where you
Football
don't have to
season.
drive. Yeah, you don't have to drive. Really, wherever you're driving, I would consider taking a land jet. And just so you have some context, for our listeners, if you mention Business with the Boys by reaching out to Rachel at landjet.com, it's $2.10 a mile. You'd be hard pressed to spend that on an Uber. So I would
Especially
highly,
split 7 or 8 ways.
yeah, it's basically free at that point. So you'd be silly not to check them out. But let's talk about our friend Sarah Robak from Horsepower. She was cool. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, she's dynamic. She's you can see why I've kind of chosen to strategically align myself with some of their where they're going and what they're doing, right? So I was introduced to them via an attorney relationship, and immediately upon meeting her, I initially met her partners and then her because she had just joined the organization, but Brooke and Deanna, just kind of sharing, my view of how I see the world of financial planning and, quite frankly, just helping my personal clients and how it married very well with how they see the world. And then when they told me, I half expected them to say, obviously, doing the fractional CFO services, and then obviously the multifamily office style approach that they would be doing kind of in-house and almost be a competitor. But then they were like, no, 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 we don't even want to do that. We just want to align and sit on the same side of the table as our clients on that family office style approach. It was pretty cool to engage with them and just the vision that they have, and I would bet heavily on the come for them because I think the upside is very high. But again, yeah, Sarah personally, shit. I mean, from having the background in playing in the World Series of Poker main event, little teaser there. She's got her CFA. She's got her CFP. I mean, she's impressive for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because we've heard from a handful of listeners that they like the podcast and the interviews that we have and the stories that we're able to share with the guests that join, but they don't necessarily have an interest in starting a business. They're more interested in being a part of a business, but oftentimes you can just be kind of a cog in the wheel at a large organization. And Horsepower is a startup. It's just over a year or so old, and Sarah, as of 4 months ago, joined the company as vice president of family office services at Horsepower today. But she had spent 14 years at TD Ameritrade, like the proverbial, large corporation, and she still had a great experience. But
And then
this
went
was
to a
a
local RIA that I'm very familiar with, which would have been a very, I don't, want to say cush job, but I mean very much a stable job, and
taking a risk and rolling the
she
dice,
chose to gamble.
or
So she's a gambler through
yeah,
and
she's a
through.
gambler. Makes sense. But she has her MBA from the University of Omaha and has more than 20 years of experience in financial services. And Landon, as you mentioned, she holds both her CFA and CFP. And she's just in general passionate about financial markets and helping clients and family achieve their financial goals. So I think you'll really enjoy this episode with Sarah. So without further ado, let's dive in and hear what she has to say.
Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believe me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah, Mayweather with the defense. I don't care what a critic got to say. I got them picking up the pieces. That to me, you really playing with your life. I'm about to come and run it all back.
Welcome to the show. I know we have met with you a handful of times now, Landon more than myself, alongside the other folks on your team, Brooke and Deanna over at Horsepower, and we're glad that you're finally joining us here today.
Well, thank you, David and Landon, for having me. I'm excited to be here with you guys today.
As are we.
Let's rock. And Landon, I should have wore my business with the boys tee to match you, but you're repping us, you're repping Landjet with the hat. So good work.
Yeah, had a little casual day here, so why not sport all the goods?
Love it. Well, Sarah, walk us through, you were born and raised in Nebraska, and as you put it last time we spoke, humble beginnings. Walk us through a little bit about your upbringing and background, and we'll obviously sort of, hop in and extract some stuff along the way.
Sure. So I was born and raised in South Omaha, kind of suburban lifestyle, middle child of 3 siblings. We're all girls. My older sister's 8 years older, younger sister 4 years younger. And I was really kind of an independent sort of, independent thinker, like to do a lot of, things that weren't necessarily along the lines of what my sisters were doing. But my parents, they raised us to be, hardworking. They were both very blue collar, very loyal to their companies. And that's sort of how they kind of brought us up. And I grew up in the same house, a 900 square foot house, up until I moved out when I was going to college. And so that's where those kind of humble beginnings come from. And if you know anybody that's from South Omaha, they'll say that, you come out of that with a lot of grit. You kind of grow up really fast and, maybe see some things that maybe you necessarily wouldn't have liked to see at such a young age. But I came out of it, like I said, very independent and kind of a go-getter, kind of wanting to, improve my life and do some great things.
Love it. Well, I'm noticing a common theme in Nebraska because Landon had shared, I forget the exact number, but used to ride his dirt bike to and from his school with like 3 people that went there. So
16 kindergarten
16
through 8th grade. Come on.
Okay. Sorry. I was a little off, but it's still pretty small. But it's always cool seeing or hearing from my perspective anyways, like the humble beginnings and sort of the tight-knit community, but then also having success in business as well. It's pretty cool to see like that transformation. But with that said, Sarah, there's a number of steps, I'm sure, in between. You didn't graduate and then start working with Horsepower and helping run that business. So what'd you do after school? What were some of the steps involved there? Walk us through what some of that stuff is like.
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to the University of Nebraska, Omaha, studied finance and banking. I knew later on in my time there that investments and finance was really a passion of mine. Went straight into the MBA program at the same college at UNO. And really throughout that time, just kind of, reconfirmed what I was really interested in. And at that point in time, I learned about the CFA program, Chartered Financial Analyst. It's really geared toward people that want to be a portfolio manager or a securities analyst, people that are really digging into companies and determining what their value is. And at the time, my professor said, this is really hard. It's very competitive. The pass rates are really low. And with my nature, I said, well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get the CFA designation. So after getting my MBA in 2006, I started my real career at TD Ameritrade, which was a job that I absolutely loved. Spent 14 years there, but 2006, 7, and 8 was, head to the desk studying for that CFA program. Barely remember my life at the time. It's for those that have taken it, it's 1 test per year. You turn around after finding out you passed the one test and you're studying again for the next test. And so that's what I was doing. My career at TD Ameritrade was so fulfilling. It was very family oriented. I started off in finance, of course, because that was my education, and quickly learned that I had a love for data and analytics and helping business leaders to make better decisions. And so I spent a lot of time, surprisingly, in marketing, because whether or not people know, marketing is it's a huge area of investment. Companies spend a ton of money on marketing, but then B, you've got a CEO and a CFO that are looking at that budget and saying, what exactly are we getting out of that? And so my job was to help our marketing team to allocate their dollars between the different channels, TV, digital, print, so on and so forth. And then the other side of that was then communicating back to, the CFO and letting him know that what we're doing in marketing is really not just art. There's a really, complex science that goes along with it. So really, really loved it. I think throughout my time there, I was also able to kind of witness, the retail investor sort of from a front row seat. And so I got to see things like the financial crisis, some of the hype that went on, if you're talking about cryptocurrency or marijuana stocks or the Twitter IPO or the Facebook IPO. Our team's job was to track retail new accounts that were coming into the business. And, again, like the payback or the ROI that we're receiving from those. So it was just really cool to get a interesting perspective on the retail investor throughout those 14 years.
Awesome.
After TD Ameritrade, as many people know, Schwab announced in 2020 during COVID that they were going to acquire TD Ameritrade. And that was a huge.
We miss you.
I know. Everyone misses TD. But they announced that they were going to acquire TD. It was a very dark day for me and my colleagues. And at that point in time, I decided to be proactive and say, I've spent 14 years at this company. I had a lot of, cross-department experience, but I didn't really have a lot of experience outside that company. So what I wanted to do is leverage my CFA designation, get closer to the client, work more in maybe a financial planning or an investment management type role. So what I did is I went to a registered investment advisor, spent 3.5 years there as a portfolio manager, essentially working alongside an advisor, allocating their portfolios, doing that type of thing. I also took the time to get my CFP designation, so certified financial planner. And that's really where a lot of the, let's call it financial things outside of investments really started clicking. I learned about estate planning, taxes, retirement planning, insurance. And with that knowledge, I was able to sit down next to clients and actually build and develop financial plans with them, which I thought was a very rewarding experience, just being able to, again, sort of partner with a client, let them see what their financial situation is looking like, whether it's the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and kind of letting their goals kind of play out and marry that up into how much they're spending and seeing, does it make sense? From that point, throughout my time at the registered investment advisor, I had met Deanna, who is our chief operating officer at Horsepower. Her and I were having several conversations. She had mentioned that she was taking a leap of faith to join an amazing startup organization, Horsepower. And her and Brooke Polly, who is a CPA by trade, Deanna's background is family office. They joined forces and formed what is today known as Horsepower a year ago in April. So we just had our 1-year anniversary in May. I joined in May of this year, so I'm not quite 120 days in. I was brought in to be the vice president of family office services, which is sort of the second division to really get going at Horsepower. And I couldn't be happier to have made the move.
And what was it like going from the, call it, legitimacy and established company like TD to a startup? I'm sure that didn't come with little thought and consideration, and perhaps there was, a sense of security that you were looking for, but maybe weren't necessarily going to get. Like, who knows what happens with this place? So, like, with your prior experience, 14 years at a multi-billion-dollar organization to, hey, I'm going to go to this startup. What was that thought process like in deciding whether or not to go in that direction?
That is a really great question. And I have to be honest with you, it was very, very tough. I mean, I have always been a very, call it, institutional, in the box, don't want to really get out of my, lane type of person. And when being approached with this incredible opportunity, you do have to keep in mind it's a startup organization. A lot of startup organizations fail. And so some of the questions that I had, were, am I making a big mistake? It wasn't that the registered investment advisor that I was at, there was nothing wrong with it at all. I had a growth path, but then I sat down and thought about impact, right? Where are you really going to be able to make an impact? And Deanna and Brooke, through their vision that they brought to Horsepower, were just so inspirational. And what they really envisioned to do for families and businesses in terms of saving them time, and in terms of the family office, really helping preserve wealth for further generations. It just gave me sort of a sense of, I guess, excitement to try something new, to sort of take the risk, because I was so confident in the vision and those two leaders. I thought that we could create just a kick-ass scenario with the three of us, and just moving forward and really, breaking boundaries and creating something brand new and interesting. It really appealed to me.
If I know you the way I think I know you, Sarah, because of your background, I would say you probably took a calculated approach, but you realized that the risk was worth the reward, just like when you're analyzing a hand of poker, right?
I was going to say, what are you
Exactly.
alluding to, Landon?
Yeah, Sarah, share a little bit about your background there, if you don't mind. So I know that was one of the when we first met, one of the coolest things I thought. I mean, obviously, I'm a like little game of cards myself, but you've actually done it on the big stage, even going as far as to play in the $10,000 buy-in, no limit hold'em World Series of Poker event, right?
Yeah, it's really interesting how it came about. It was, I think, maybe 2005. I was watching ESPN at a bar, and they were playing poker. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. And I asked my boyfriend at the time, what are they doing? And he's like, well, they're playing poker. And online poker was really big at the time. And I told myself that, well, I want to do that. I'm a hugely competitive person. You'll learn that about me if we get to know each other more. But I decided that that was going to be something I was going to go all in on. So I started playing poker online, doing these multi-table tournaments. Really what I wanted to do is work past a really large field of people and be number one. So I started doing that, did it for many years. In 2011, the specific date is in April. It was called Black Friday, where they shut down online poker in the United States. And then at that point, you were
Sad day.
forced to actually play in person. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to walk into the Horseshoe Casino. I'm going to play poker. It's extremely nerve-wracking, especially if you've never really been, you don't know how to find your seat, you're not sure, the little rules that come in, and how you can be, in trouble for just doing something that you weren't aware of. But went in
Pace of
there,
the
and then
game, right? Like I know for me, the first time, obviously played a lot of online poker as well. Like sitting there having to just play one hand at a time when you're used to having 4, 5, 6 sit and go tables open and being able to rapid fire. That was different.
yes, it was. And I think so then I just kind of started to become a regular, going up there for their Saturday 10 a.m. tournament, became a familiar face. Most people may or may not know that the average poker field is like 5% women. So you kind of stick out like a sore thumb if you're there. People know who you are. But then I got more serious. I started entering into local events outside of the horseshoe. I would travel a few hours. Then Vegas came into the purview. The first time I went to Vegas for a World Series of Poker tournament was in 2011, when it was a little less, I would say, it wasn't exactly catering to as many of the novices. The buy-ins were pretty big. You didn't get a lot of chips. But then finally, and I played, here and there in Vegas leading up to this, but in 2016, I made that decision. I was going to play in the World Series of Poker main event, scraped up $10,000 of my own money, played in it, and I did make day two. Most of the field does, or at least probably a little over 50%, but there was probably 6 to 7,000 people in the tournament, only about 200 and something women. So I was excited about that. I got to meet all of the pros that I had followed. So think Daniel Negreanu, Phil Hellmuth, Antonio Sfondiari, got pictures with all of them. It was just an incredible experience. And then for the years after that, kept playing, never played in the $10,000 World Series, but in 2019, I had a banner year. End of 2019 into 2020, I won two tournaments that were in the range of, or not one, but placed high in two tournaments that the prize was around $20,000 for each of those. So super exciting. COVID happened. People weren't playing poker as much, and I've shifted my I guess, schedule, and poker's not really accommodated in my schedule as much, but it's on the list and I'm going to get back to it. I just got to find the time.
Love it.
Couple follow-up questions to that. One, looking back over the years, have you done the math? Are you net positive or negative in your winnings and buy-ins? I'm always curious with people who gamble.
I prefer not to do the exact math. No, but my
that
gut
answers my
would tell
question.
me, my gut would tell me I'm probably right around break even. My friend, it's funny, my friend would say I would get out of a poker tournament and play like 11 hours and I would not cash. Only 10% of a tournament actually makes money, any money. And I would come out of the tournament color and be like, I spent 10 hours at the table playing this tournament. And she would say, well, at least you got your money's worth. And that's not true. I mean, if you're a poker player, you know that grinding it out for that many hours and walking away with nothing is not what you're looking for. But
Yeah, it's like shooting 102 on the golf course and saying, yeah, you got your money's worth. You saw the whole course, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Not what I was there for.
Random question, and I have a more legit question, but do you know, with your experience, in this case poker, but I'll say cards in general, and your analytical mind, do you know how to count cards?
I do not. The sophistication of poker is a lot about probabilities, and certainly I feel like I could give you a pretty good estimate of what your odds are at any given time in a tournament. But a lot of it is gut too. But I do not count cards.
Oh, good.
Card counting is a different beast. Yeah, because you have to keep track of not just what comes out in your hand. You got to keep track of what you see on everything, and it's a constant plus minus game.
Yeah. What I'm sure there are some things from poker that you've been able to extrapolate and apply to business. I'd be curious if you can try and connect those dots. I know I'm putting you on the spot with that, but connect those dots of like what skills work, because we could view it as like, wow, you spent all that time and you broke even financially, or hey, I learned X and Y and Z that I'm still using to this day in other endeavors. So what are some things that you can extrapolate from what you learned in poker to business today?
Well, I think it's a great question. And for the most part, I've thought about this a lot. And for the most part, I like to sort of compare playing poker to investing because I think they're very similar. And something that I've really had a deep passion for is kind of behavioral finance, which is like why the brain does what it does and why we make the decisions that we make when we're investing. So if you think about poker and you think about investing, there's a lot of commonalities. I think number one is if you're going to do well, you need to have a plan and you need to stick to it. I think the other one is patience. Patience is absolutely key, whether you're talking about investing or whether you're talking about playing poker. Again, when we talked about, sitting at a tournament, you can sit there literally for 2 to 3 hours and not even play a hand because you just haven't saw that opportunity. Or if you're impatient, you can say, it's been 2 rounds around the table. I haven't played a hand. I'm just going to get in there. And that would be kind of, diverging from your plan. And think about investing. A lot of times people will say, well, my account is down, 5% in the last 6 months. I'm frustrated. I'm going to take my money and I'm going to, do something else. Well, that also, I mean, as investors, we have to be very patient. You don't measure returns in a 6 month, even 1 year, sometimes even a 3 year period, because we know that over time, as long as you're disciplined and as long as you're sticking to your plan, the rewards will come. And I think the third one that I kind of gave a cheater to is really the discipline. You have to really be true to the intent of why you're sitting down and why you came to the game, and not let those little events, like if you're at the poker table and someone catches that one card that you didn't want to see, and they end up winning the pot. You can't let that impact your entire tournament. Just like you buy a stock, 12 months later they go bankrupt and you lose your investment. Don't let that impact the rest of your portfolio or the rest of your mindset toward your, I guess, investing life.
Oh, good stuff. I'm curious now. So, because there's folks that listen to this show who either want to start up their own business or be a part of a startup, and there's a lot of reservations. I'm curious to know, for your journey and what's it been, about 120 days so far.
Yep.
So I'm curious to know, like, what have you noticed as some of the benefits of being a part of a startup compared to being a part of a large corporation?
Yeah. I think it's certainly the ability that you have to make a difference. So think about a large corporation and you go in, and I will be honest that, at TD Ameritrade, it was a big, small company, small, big company, however you put it. You did have a lot of the ability to make an impact, but a lot of organizations, you walk in, here's our policies, this is your role, make sure that you don't, get out of your lane, and make sure that, the responsibilities or the things that you're working on are X, Y, and Z. I basically got to arrive with a blank slate. I have a vision that was framed on what our family office division is going to be, and I love it, but actually executing on it and building around it and growing it is something that I am completely responsible for. And as much as it scares me, it also ignites me. And so I would say, in terms of being able to make an impact, look back at your life and say, what did I do? I probably would have regretted not being able to have that piece on my, on my resume or on my autobiography, to say that this is something that I done. I took a risk because I believed in the vision and the mission that our CEO and CEO set forward with. And I really wanted to take something, run with it, and really have an impact on not just myself, but the lives of people, wanting to help people, wanting to, enrich other people's lives. And so for those that are thinking about it, I would say, make sure your financial situation is in order, but at the same time, if there's a vision and a mission that you really truly believe in, make that jump.
Yeah, it's kind of got to be fun having almost a blank canvas to be able to go paint, and obviously knowing your partners and sharing their vision. I think what you guys are going to do is really special, and so that's got to be exciting. I know I'm excited for you guys, for sure. So good things are coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you guys want me to go into the family office?
Yeah, so let's start off.
Let's do an overview first.
Yeah, overview of horsepower and like what, because we've said the word horsepower, but we haven't got into exactly what you guys do. So let's start there.
Sure. So Horsepower today, again, just had their first anniversary in May, and the division that has truly been operational, kind of the rocket fuel to what allowed me to come in, is their fractional consulting business. And I'm hoping you get the opportunity to speak with Brooke and Deanna, because they're really the fire behind the firepower that we've got with our fractional consulting. But for small and medium-sized business owners, that's essentially our target there. And what we are offering is fractional talent, mostly in accounting, because Brooke is a CPA by trade, mostly accounting, a bit of HR services. But if you're a small or a medium-sized business owner and you say, I'm growing very quickly and I need accounting support, but I'm not exactly sure what I need, we could be a partner for you. If you are a company where, let's say, you recently lost your CFO, he just all of a sudden up and left, or you're a CEO of a company and you say, I'm receiving financial reports, but I'm not sure that they're accurate, or I haven't received financial reports in several months, I'm not sure what's going on. Our team, our horses, which are 1099 contractors who are very skilled, and are, CFO level talent or controller level talent, will come in, do an assessment to kind of prescribe that exact prescription of what your company needs. Sometimes it's an ongoing engagement. Sometimes it's a, short-term project. But despite what it is, we will find, that right combination. Let's say it's a controller and a staff accountant. Maybe their hours will differ depending on the need. And we will put them on your project. Our real vision and mission is to develop relationships with our business owners. And so some of the examples that we have, it doesn't necessarily just stop with accounting. If we realize that there is, while we're on an accounting project, we may seek out or see that there is a HR need or a need in information technology. So we're more than willing to assign additional horses in other areas or reach out to our network of professionals to really help business owners to focus their time on running the business, so that we can help, with their back office, getting things in order. None of our contracts look the same. And again, what we're really striving for is to make sure that we're developing strong relationships with our clients.
I think that's something that, many in our audience can appreciate and relate to, right? Obviously, Business with the Boyz has a lot of business owners in that sweet spot of small to medium-sized companies that, they probably don't necessarily want to go pay $250,000 plus a year to a CFO, right? So having somebody there on a fractional basis that can kind of do things on a per project basis or on a retainer is probably a great thing. And I know that we've worked closely on a number of things, and I'm excited to see kind of where you go. And as you add more horses to the stable, the talent over there is pretty abundant.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also offers flexibility for our contractors, for, the great talented horses that we've got in our stable. A lot of them have been in, the corporate world for, let's say, 20, 30 years, and they enjoy the variety. They enjoy, being able to take on different projects, being able to work at a schedule that they're comfortable with. And so really, it's kind of a win-win situation.
I want to hit on something that you've said, but we haven't necessarily talked about. I think it's very clever that the name of the company is Horsepower and your contractors, team members are called horses. I'm curious to know, like, if you know the story of how that came up or came about, and then also, are there any other sort of cool, quirky things that you guys use from a language standpoint? Because I think that there's opportunity for companies to brand and market themselves externally to prospects and clients, but also branding yourself internally for culture purposes. So walk us through some of that so we can understand what you guys are doing internally in terms of the linguistics, so to speak.
Yeah, I think over time it will continue to evolve and grow. But the couple of examples that I have is, I'll hear again that the consulting division is not the division that I'm in, but I'll hear them talking about different horses and how so-and-so is a thoroughbred. And so they're talking that language all the time, or sometimes we joke with each other. Someone will accidentally say, maybe not accidentally, it just comes out like, well, don't put the cart before the horse. And then we'll say, no pun intended, things like that. But we have really tried to play on the horse idea. Back in May, when I first arrived at the company, we had a Kentucky Derby event at a local establishment here, and it was a really great, packed event, and everyone had their hats on. And I think that really helped to, kind of get everyone excited around our brand. And so we'll continue to look for those opportunities. And from what I hear, the Kentucky Derby will be a continual, event for horsepower. It makes so much sense.
Love it. And is there a particular, you mentioned small to medium size companies, but if I'm listening to this, I'm wondering, is my manufacturing company a fit? Is my technology company a fit? Is my online company a fit? Like, is there a particular type of business beyond the size of business that you tend to focus on, like in a specific industry, or is it all over the map? And maybe you can give a few examples of the types of companies that you guys enjoy working with.
Yeah, it really is all over the map. And I think one thing that is beautiful about it is that our horses have a vast amount of experience. And so we're very careful when we're looking at a manufacturing company, for example, to make sure that we're sourcing a horse that is, that has experience in manufacturing or real estate or, whatever the case may be, because the lingo and the logistics can be very different when you're talking across industries. But I'm trying to think in terms of examples. We have anything from call it auto parts to, or like auto salvage to like retail. Those are the specific examples that are coming to mind, but it really is across the board, across industries. I would say, the nice thing about it is that you're able to easily connect with us and sort of see if it would be a mutual fit, and we're happy to have a conversation at any point.
Well, I think the nice thing as well is business, no matter what line of business you're in, right? Like you said, the lingo and some of that stuff may change, but really when you're boiling it down to a P&L and everything else, it's pretty much transferable across the board.
Right.
And what do you have insight on, so the team of contractors that you have, the team of horses that you have, there's a lot of companies out there that struggle with the hiring process and finding good quality talent. And I would say that struggle becomes even more real when you're working with contractors and not necessarily employees of the company, because that contractor, presumably they have other things going on as well outside of your organization. So help us understand, if you have insight on how you're attracting and vetting the appropriate contractors to where you guys feel confident in placing them in front of the clients that you spent all the time and effort in acquiring. Do you have insight on that?
Not as much. I will just say that, we want to make sure, you'll hear Deanna say it, all the time. We want to work with good people, and we know that everyone is not always going to be a fit, whether it's a horse or whether it's a client. And so a lot of times it's about understanding the values that folks are bringing to the table. And what I would say is, over the past little over a year that the consulting division has been active, they've been able to call it stock the stable with a good volume of talent. And so I'm not aware of really being caught in a crunch where we weren't able to actually find someone. And the nice thing about the approach, I think, is that our ideal contractor is really someone, I would say it varies, but it can oftentimes be someone that's been in the business for an extremely long time. So, they know what they're doing. They know the industry that they're in. They have good values. They have a good work ethic, as evidenced by their resume. So that would be probably the insight that I could give there.
Gotcha. So with bringing someone like you on board, I'm sure that's because there are big plans for growth and what horsepower looks like on a go forward basis. Where where is horsepower going? Like,
Yeah.
so you guys have the fractional consulting, right now, but they brought you in to run a newer division. So talk to us about that, and then what are the other factions that will continue to be integrated and grown as a part of the ecosystem that you're all building?
Sure. So I was brought in May to lead the family office services division. It's so exciting, and it's sort of breaking the barriers of what you may or may not have heard about family office services in the past. So Deanna brings a really unique background to the table. She spent 10 years working for a extremely wealthy family in Omaha. And she was their family office chief investment officer. And we're talking about a traditional family office, which is essentially an organization that is set up to handle the affairs of a specific family. And when I say affairs, I mean, soup to nuts, from investments to legal to insurance to,
Bill
home
pay.
management, all of those things. So she was their chief investment officer. She also became their chief operating officer at about 7 years in. And she was able to see sort of the level of service that a high net worth family is able to receive in that type of environment. In partnering up with Brooke, she wanted to bring that family office concept to a wider audience. And there's two things that I think really make what we're doing unique. Number one is the accessibility. So, what we're saying is, you don't have to necessarily be a billionaire or even have 100 million plus to need and for a family office to make sense to you. But what we're doing is doing it in a multi-family office concept. So our idea is we will serve a handful of families with the team that I'm building. Number two is independence. And so this is, kind of again, what Deanna brought to the table is that we want to essentially be that liaison, that concierge, that quarterback that is sitting on the same side of the table as the client, coordinating those activities. However, we do not plan to offer legal advice. We don't plan to manage assets. We're not going to sell insurance. Our job is to essentially make sure that all of those professional providers that the client trusts are working out of the same playbook, and that we're all forging ahead on behalf of that client. We will offer services in-house. If you think about a very complex family, and they may have investments with 5 different investment advisors, they may have private equity, we'll plan to offer a consolidated reporting for them, as well as some cash flow planning. So they might have capital calls with their private equity, or they might have a large purchase that they're looking to make in 6 months, and we'll sort of know their liquidity across their various accounts. We'll also do bill payment. And most importantly, and where the opportunity lies, is those family governance issues. So if you think about families that are of, some type of wealth, typically there's some family dynamics that can come into play. And I've done a lot of research and reading about, how important it is for families to sit down and define their vision and their values, and to kind of rally the family around this, and to have recurring conversations, and to slowly open the curtain about, you've got business owners on here. I think it's important to talk about, succession. So when you have a business owner that is getting older, or at some point he will, it's really important to have the conversations around expectations. Who's going to take over the business? Do the kids want to take over the business? So we are willing in our family office services division to facilitate and to coordinate conversations, whether it's setting values, whether it's having a monthly family meeting, whether it's getting together and talking about, things that you want to do on the philanthropical front, like a donor advised fund, and what organizations might benefit based on the values that you've set forth. So The only one that's going to pay us is the client, which, you know, really demonstrates our independence. And really what we want to do is create strong relationships with the advisors that our clients are working with and really help strengthen it. And so that's really, you know, kind of the vision that we've brought into this brand new family office services division. And I'm here to really make it grow, and super excited about it.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it as well, Sarah, as you know, because I've been kind of championing this for years that, you know, I think it's absurd that somebody needs to have $500 million or whatever to have a family office type service. I work with plenty of individuals personally who are, in my opinion, of enough worth that if, you know, you ask them if they were willing to pay for some services like bill pay, right? Just somebody just handle this, right? Like all of the little nuances and noise that goes on in their lives. They're so busy running companies, you know, number of them with 1,000+ employees and trying to grow that business and also protect it. I mean, I don't see why, you know, there shouldn't be somebody with a $50 million net worth shouldn't have access to, you know, kind of an a la carte type feature of, hey, we'd like somebody to facilitate family meetings once a year. Maybe they do take you up on bill pay. Maybe they do take you up on some cash flow stuff. But I'm super excited, and I think you guys see the world and where it's going. And I think you're on the early edge of that for sure.
Thank you. And really, you know, who we're trying to serve is people that realize that time is your most valuable asset, right? I mean, you know, even Warren Buffett can't buy himself more time. And so we're there to serve the business owner and or the ultra high net worth family or high net worth family that realizes that their situation is complicated. They know all the things that they need to do, but they just don't want to spend the time doing it. And so we're there to kind of alleviate or add some time back on their calendar so that they can do the things that they enjoy. They can
Well, you're there for
travel.
peace
They
of mind,
can,
right?
yeah,
They just want to know
exactly.
it's taken care of, right? That's what all my successful clients tell me is I just want to know that this is taken care of. Perfect example. I met with a guy Friday, absolute studies, crushing it, 40 years old, has 4 companies now and is not slowing down anytime soon. He's been with another quote unquote advisor. And we started, you know, started talking to him about all the business planning side of stuff. And he's like, whoa, you do all this as well? It's like, I thought you just wanted to manage my accounts when I called you. He's like, I, you know, wanted you to take a look at that. He's like, this is what I've been looking for, you know? And then he literally was like, how are you going to get paid on all this stuff? Because what we're talking about. And I was like, don't worry about that. Let's grow these things. You know, hopefully I do a good enough job for you along the way that, you know, yeah, we're going to manage some accounts for you now, but eventually you got to do something with these companies. Right. And he's like, this is what I've been looking for. And I mean, the instant relief on his face to have somebody, you know, be like, hey, I'm going to quarterback this situation for you. You just go out and make money and do what you do. It's crazy to see that light bulb turn on.
And it's just very rare, unfortunately, for, you know, professional service providers in this environment to be proactive and to be holistic. And, you know, Landon, we've obviously developed a relationship because we share those values. But we certainly believe more in a holistic relationship and building for the long term versus a transaction with our clients.
Yeah, it was funny at the end of the meeting. He was like, I've been with 2 other advisors previously. He's like, all they ever want to talk about is my investment accounts. He goes, we haven't even brought those up yet. I was like, yeah, we'll just get the statements. That's part of the deal, but that's the easy stuff, right? Like, and so yeah, it's unfortunately, I guess fortunately for myself, I think that's a big differentiator in what people are looking for, right?
Absolutely. And I think another thing that I would like to solve for, and something that I've heard that can happen in the industry is, you know, not everyone's a finance guru, right? And it's completely understood. You know, you may be a doctor, and I'm certainly not going to, you know, examine someone's leg and tell them what's going on with it. But I think that there's an intimidation factor with certain folks when they visit with either their CPA or their their investment advisor or their attorney. They're afraid to ask questions because they don't want to seem like they're not smart. And I think when it comes to those things, people need to realize it's a very specialized area. I mean, we didn't just learn the areas that we're experts in overnight. But I would like to be that, let's call it the trusted confidant of my clients, to where, if
I
they're
call it
looking,
the MTA, most trusted advisor,
yeah,
right?
if they're looking at their investment report and something just doesn't make sense to them, and they ask their advisor and didn't feel like they understood it, I'll take a second stab at it. I'm more than happy to help alleviate. And that's where I go back to, strengthening those relationships. Is I'm more than willing to spend extra time, to allow the advisor to do what they're good at, which is, investment management and financial planning and all those things. I thought I was going on to something else, but I lost it. So
No, you're absolutely right though, Sarah. I always say it's hard for people to get financially naked, right? Like
sure.
they walk into the office, and this guy in particular, he's got multiple businesses in the trades, right? And he's just acquiring another multi-million dollar shop, a competitor, and kind of exploring that. And he's like, look, I'm just a blue collar, and I'm like, yeah, but look what you've built, man. Like, I love your story. He's like, and I don't know much about your world, but I know I need something more than what I'm getting. Right. And so it can be tough for him, but I think if you just have a real conversation and truly get at how I literally, I start off every meeting with, how can I help? Right. Like, at the end of the day, that's what I'm here to do. Right. Hopefully we get along well enough that there's some things we can help you with. And we'll take it taken care of over time. So I think you guys are very much in alignment, obviously, with how we serve clients, and it's pretty cool to see for sure.
And it really couldn't be a more incredible time for us to be really igniting this. When you think about the great wealth transfer and think about $80 trillion that is set to transfer in the next 2 decades, from the baby boomers to, philanthropic efforts and the next generations. I mean, the opportunity for skilled and strong advisors to come to the table to really
bring value,
partner with those clients and preserving that wealth. I think it's really going to be key. Most people have probably heard the shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves saying, but the stigma is that typically when you're talking about families with wealth, by the third generation, the majority of that wealth is spent. And so what we're here to do is build relationships, work with families, help them to solve their problems, help to save them time, but most importantly, help them to, define their values and work in a cohesive way across their family, and to make sure that they're communicating. A lot of times the breakdown comes from lack of communication, either because these topics can be very tricky. When you're talking about money and inheritances and mortality, it's not something that we want to talk about necessarily, but these are necessary topics that we have to bring forward if we're going to really make a difference with this 80 trillion.
Because let's be clear, having a shitload of money can actually be a problem for a family. See it all the time. It doesn't seem like it should be, but it can absolutely shred a family if not done appropriately.
Yeah, absolutely right.
And you had mentioned you shouldn't have to be a billionaire or $100 million to be in a position to utilize family office style services. Is it a net worth number? Is it a income? Like what is that sort of? You said you guys are looking to cast a wider net. So to what extent are you bringing down that net worth requirement for this particular offering?
Sure. We bring it down pretty significantly. It probably doesn't make sense to have a family office, either, single or multifamily, if you have, call it $500,000, because that's probably something that you and maybe an investment advisor can kind of manage on your own. But the level that we've defined has been maybe $10 million and up. And really it has to do with the complexity. How much are we working with? How many family members are involved? How many different accounts? Is there an operating business? But at the end of the day, I would welcome, any conversations to see if we are a mutual fit. I think the positive thing is that our pricing is extremely straightforward. It's a retainer-based model. I could share it with you if you wanted to contact me for a discussion. But I think that's what's really exciting about it, is that it's not an hourly rate if you're going with our full suite of services, because we don't want our clients to be afraid to afraid to pick up the phone to call us. We want to be there when they need us. We want to be able to help them solve what they're trying to, what is giving them, anxiety, or what's taking up their time. We want to make sure that we're there for them. And so, again, I'd be happy to talk with anyone that wants to dive a little bit deeper into our pricing model.
I know you mentioned you're not necessarily managing assets or implementing insurance strategies. You may want to chat with this guy. I know his name's, I think it's Landon Freuer, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that's it.
Yeah, Landon Freuer, and he does just that. So he may be a good connection for you guys.
I'll take that one down for sure.
Oh man. Well, this has been wonderful, Sarah. And before we wrap up, one of the things I want to ask is we ask all of our guests about a book that's had an impact on them. And the book that you chose, I'm going to say that it's by Burton, because I'm going to butcher that last name. So if you can color between the lines for me, certainly feel free. But the book is called A Random Walk Down Wall Street. First of all, if you know the pronunciation of his last name, please help me. If not, and regardless, why'd you pick that book?
Yeah. So it's Burton Malkiel, I believe is the pronunciation. Random Walk Down Wall Street. It was one of the first investment related books that was recommended to me when I was in college. And really, it is kind of a guidebook or a coaching book for the individual investor. And it goes into a lot of different topics, whether it's, the basis of the book is, a monkey could throw the dart at any, stock and have just as many chances to make money as a wealth advisor or wealth manager. But the real idea behind it is understanding the basics of investing, not getting caught into some of those emotional traps. Index investing is okay if you have a fairly simple situation. Warren Buffett even says, Vanguard index funds are, something that the long-term investor should love and appreciate. And so that was kind of my first dive into the investment world as far as reading. And so it's stayed close to my heart. There's probably been about 7 or 8 iterations written about it over the years. And so for anyone young or anyone starting off in investing and finance in general, I would certainly recommend that book.
Love it.
I'm just checking it out right now. I haven't actually read or heard of that one, so
scoop it.
I have to scoop that one up.
I've bought in books while recording podcast, Landon. I think you should as well.
I just did.
Well, Sarah, if I am a business owner and I need some fractional help, or if I'm an individual who is intrigued by the family office offering that you guys have, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I would recommend for folks to go to our website. It's horsepowertoday.com. And that would be the best place to start. There are places on there for you to fill in a form to have a meeting with us, whether it's about the consulting side or the family office services side. And we would love to talk to you and understand a little bit more about your situation.
They'll even send a Landjet out to pick you up because they are actually subscription members to Landjet. So
yeah, that would be perfect.
If you're local in Omaha anyways. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Well,
Sarah, thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Thank you for joining, and for everyone tuning in. We appreciate your time and attention during this episode as well. But Sarah, thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Thank you so much, guys.
Take care.
Whoa. Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believe me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah, Mayweather with the defense. I don't care what a critic got to say. I got them picking up the pieces. That to me, you really playing with your life. I'm about to come and run it.